Long before the popular TCG card shop simulator, you could live the fantasy of running your own card shop in Kardboard Kings. A charming game with interesting design choices, but that didn't reach the same level of success. In this video, I'll break down the game's development and explore what took part in the limited success it had. I'll mainly focus on its world building and how it is one of the game's strengths that was not fully explored. Let's dive in. Development. The year is 2020, and two guys meet each other in a toga party at Henry's house. For some reason, they decided to name the studio they then founded after this location. The characters are two Australians. Oscar Britton, creator of Desert Child, currently working on Nanamon, was the main responsible for the art, and Rob Gross, that later released the game Plong, was the one programming. Working together through the COVID pandemic, they ended up releasing Kardboard Kings in the beginning of 2022, and its only expansion, Card Game Island, at the end of the same year, with the help of the publisher Akupara Games. Market reception. Kardboard Kings had relatively low success, especially when compared to the really popular TCG card shop simulator that came out 2 years later. Looking at SteamDB data to give you an idea, over half a year after its release, TCG Card Shop often has over 2,000 people playing it and almost 40k overwhelmingly positive reviews, while Kardboard Kings only has about 400 reviews that are only mostly positive and almost no one playing it. Don't get me wrong, if I'm ever able to release a game as popular as Kardboard Kings, that would make me proud, but when we compare these two somewhat similar games, their market success is worlds apart. This difference can be attributed to many factors. I believe the main one is the fact that the later game rode on a wave of popularity for shop simulators that mainly started with the game Supermarket Simulator. But I speculate that even without this, TCG Card Shop Sim would still do better, because it is a simpler game with no story or character dialogues, which probably appeals more to the audience that's looking for a chill and cozy game. Nonetheless, there is surely a decently large audience that prefers a game with a richer world, me being included in it. So, besides other differences that exist between the two games, one of the more evident ones being the art style, I would argue that a compelling and immersive world is the main selling point for Kardboard Kings, but an aspect in which the game didn't fully hit the mark. Elements of a deep and dynamic world. The gameplay loop for a game where you run a card shop is as you would expect. You buy cards, sell cards, gain money and reputation, and repeat. What keeps this loop dynamic in Kardboard Kings is the news system. Each day, news notifications pop up, letting you know that certain cards' prices will change in 2 or 3 days. These news events come in many forms, like cards of a certain type doing well in a tournament, or church members burning cards of certain colors claiming they are satanic increases their value. I really like this system because it makes the world feel alive, but I think it doesn't fully reach its potential when it comes to world building. In an old devlog on the developer's YouTube channel, one of the news updates is shown as an actual newspaper, rather than just a small notification. That extra layer of immersion would have been fantastic. They could have even taken it further by adding actual articles to the news, making the world feel even richer. Players wouldn't be forced to read them, the headline could carry the key info, but for those who wanted to dive deeper, it would have been a great touch. The game already does something similar in a way that for me works really well. While mechanics are explained through dialogue with other characters, which I think is a great approach, there is also an in-game magazine with additional info. Right at the start of it, it features an interview with the character that created the card game. This is a small detail, but it adds a lot. You can enjoy the game just fine without reading it, but for those who do, it really takes you into the game's world. Realism gone too far. All of this being said, realism in game design is certainly a double-edged sword, since it can have a negative impact in gameplay. For example, if the news system was ultra-realistic, card prices would react almost instantly to news events. But the devs wisely chose to delay the price changes by a few days, which gives the player more agency and makes for a more strategic and fun experience. But then, there is the postman. When you buy cards online for your shop, the postman delivers them the next day, but he does so at random times. Sometimes he arrives late in the day, meaning the new stock misses early customers. This is really realistic, but also super frustrating, especially since you only get a handful of customers per day. Of course, everything depends on one's taste, and frustration can be an important tool in many games. But in this case, if it was up to me, I would, for example, make it so the postman always arrives as either the first or second visitor of the day. That way, you still get the idea that he can be late, but it wouldn't disrupt gameplay as much.
The donut-shaped world.
Now let's talk about the card game itself, which is called Warlock. It has surprisingly deep and unique mechanics for what is essentially a minigame. In an interview with Checkpoint Gaming, Oscar reveals that a lot of the inspiration from it came from the 2000s game Digimon Digibattle, like a rock paper scissors mechanic, but after comparing the two, I really like the twists that Warlock adds. Some rules do work better than others, but I believe the biggest issue with it isn't the rules, it is that you barely get to play it. The devs mentioned in a devlog that they wanted to make a game where you sell cards but you don't really play the game. They even built this into the game's lore. The main character inherited the shop from his father, a former world champion, but doesn't know how to play the game. I don't know if afterwards they changed their mind or if they got some sort of player feedback, but like I said earlier, about a year after release, they introduced the card game Island expansion. It lets you play as a different character who actually knows how to play, but there are some limitations. You can't build your own deck, only use a pre-made one. You can't access the island right away, it's only after you complete the main story that you can buy a plane ticket, and if you lose a match, you're sent back to the shop and have to wait a week in game before trying again, and tickets aren't cheap by the way. I think this was a big missed opportunity. For one, the card game is somewhat fun, so it is annoying to me that you can't just play it when you feel like it. Also, being able to play Warlock as you run the shop could have greatly added to the experience. The game wouldn't just be about making money, it could also be about collecting cards to build better decks. On top of that, the game has a lot of cool characters that you can interact with. Being able to challenge them or being challenged by them would have made things even more interesting. This is where I feel like the game's world is like a donut, with a big hole in the middle. The entire game revolves around a card game that you don't really get to play, which I think really kept the game from reaching its full potential. Of course, reworking the game to seamlessly integrate Warlock into the shop simulator would have been a huge undertaking, especially since this game was developed by a 2-person dev team, but still, they put all this effort into adding the expansion with the card game, and it feels like such a shame that access to it was so restricted. I imagine they might also have been worried about forcing players to play Warlock if they didn't want to, but if this was a concern, I think they could still have implemented it in a way that let players engage as much or as little as they wanted. Giving you options on how you experience them is, after all, one of the main strengths that games have over other media. Going back to the TCG Card Shop Simulator, this game was also released without you being able to play the card game, even if there are plans to add it at some point. But again, this game probably suffers a lot less from this fact because it focuses a lot more on the economic progression. For Kardboard Kings, however, where the world you are in plays such a big part, having this huge piece missing is a lot more detrimental.
Conclusion.
So, to sum up, here are my main takeaways from Kardboard Kings regarding world building. 1. Lean into your strengths. Not all games need a rich and involving world, but if your game has one, then every bit of effort you can spare fleshing it out can make a big difference. 2. Find the sweet spot for realism. Some realism is great, but too much and the gameplay can really suffer. 3. Avoid donut-shaped worlds. For sure, omitting certain parts of a universe can make sense in some specific cases, even if they are central to it. But, if you can, it is often better to give the player both the donut and the donut hole, and let them eat whatever they want, which segues us into the last point. 4. Give players options. If you have a rich world, this can certainly be overwhelming, so having the option to choose how much you engage or explore can add a lot of value. That's it. Oh, and if you were left wondering if you should play this game, I would say the answer is probably yes, but only if you are either into trading card games or shop simulators. And if you like both genres, then definitely give it a go. Thanks for watching, and if you have any feedback, I'd love to read it in the comments. Bye bye.